So today is one of my favourite days of the agricultural year. It's the day I get kale and collard diversity into the ground in earnest. I don't know what the future holds, but one thing I can be sure of is that if this bioregion has a future, it's going to be a kale culture and a collard culture to a degree. The wherefores are somewhat complex, but it's no mistake, for example, that the Willamette Valley has emerged as the de facto centre of global kale diversity, for example, both in Brassica oleracea, European, and Brassica napus, Russo-Siberian kales. This is the kale collard bed. There's not too much there in the way of well, actually, there is quite a lot there in the way of diversity. This is a classic example. This is a Russo-Siberian population out of wild garden seed. You can already begin to see the diversity in it, but as the plants grow, and I'll do follow-ups on these, we will really got to see the diversity picture in earnest. And this is a Brassica oleracea European diversity population called Kale Coalition from Adaptive Seed. They've been working with it for a decade and a half now. Those two populations are my cornerstone diversity populations in Russo-Siberian and European kales. This is probably one of the more spectacular offerings that's come out of wild garden seed in recent years. It's called Lacinato Rainbow. It's a huge, majestic, productive, gorgeous, statuesque kale. Tastes fantastic. This I refer to as the chick magnet of kales. This is another one from the Frank Morton stable. It's essentially a lacinato or palm tree kale that's been upped in the beauty stakes and winter hardiness stakes. It has a gorgeous pink midrib. It really is such a beautiful kale. Wins everybody's hearts. Here we have a Savoy kale from the Capula stable in Corvallis. The Capula stable have been at the forefront of the independent plant breeding movement in the Pacific Northwest for decades now. Their material's always extraordinary. This is Madeley. It's the favourite kale of Andrew Still at Adaptive Seed in Brownsville. He's one of the more knowledgeable and experienced kale stewards in the States, so a good bet that that one will do well for us this year. And then here we've got is this scarlet? Yes, this is. It doesn't look particularly red right now, but that's the nature of these plants. They get much redder and purpler as the weather gets colder. Here is a Cascade Glaze. This is a sort of a glossy, gorgeous collard developed in the, well, I should say, brought back to its former glory by a troika of independent plant stewards in the Pacific Northwest, and it's generally one of people's most favourite winter leaf brassicas in the garden or farm. It's gorgeous. And then we start to get into collards. These are two collard populations that I've been moving around the West for a few years. This is essentially a champion collard that has been introduced to a few other characters. It's very productive. And this is the survivor collard. The original progeny for this went through a minus 10 degree weather event in Eugene a decade or so ago. That's 40 degrees below freezing. It's an enormous plant that has a tendency to perennialize, and the sweetest part of it was that it was selected from the garden of my first gardening student, and she passed the seed for it along to me on her deathbed. That's Ruth. Okay, you can see the bed's looking wet. That's because I've had irrigation running on it for a good 12 hours or so. I really wanted to get a bank of water onto these beds. Those plants are going to be going into the bed on the left, you can see where I've already put the labelled stakes in the ground for where they're going to go. And then we'll do further updates as the season continues.